Happy Monday night. Welcome into another edition of the Wolverine.com podcast here live on the YouTube channel. You'll hear it in the podcast feed after the fact. If you're of that variety, of course, Anthony Broom here with Clayton Safey and Chris Ballas, as we are every Monday night, coming off of I got to do math again, 41-17 win over Penn State on Saturday afternoon in Ann Arbor, as we do every week. And as our show is every week, sponsored by Rogue Shop. You'll hear an ad for those guys in a little bit. Of course, thanks to them for their support of the show. So as we do every Monday, or as we have been doing every Monday, we will start because obviously you've heard from me after the game. You've heard from Ballas and Skeen last night. We'll start the show off with some of Clayton's takeaways from the win over Penn State, and then we'll jump right into questions here. So feel free to fill up the chat, leave a super chat. We'll move you up to the front of the line if you use that little donate button below. So shout out to everyone who does that. But Clayton, thoughts on what you saw on Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, I think Michigan is potentially a great team, and that's kind of the overarching takeaway because you didn't know for sure after, not playing full, complete, great games in the first 3 games of the Big Ten season and then not playing anybody other than a traffic cone, as you would say, Anthony, in the first 3 games in the non-conference. So, I mean, it was the first actual test, and Michigan passed it with flying colors. The final score doesn't even really represent just how bad of a butt kicking, as J.J. McCarthy said, that was. I mean, they ran the ball all over them. They stopped the run. They stopped the pass. They threw actually probably, pretty efficiently. And then there was a certain point in the game where it was like, okay, let's just continue to run. They break off 2 60-yarders in a row for touchdowns. And that was kind of all she wrote when Michigan kind of charged there in the third quarter. So, I mean, it was just super impressive. I think I might be even more impressed with the defense than I was with the offense, just because, that was pretty thorough what they did on that side. 1 first down in the first half. That was incredible. So it's pretty much the takeaway is that Michigan is a great team again, potentially better than last season. And that's going to give them a chance in every game going forward.
We just don't know still because I don't know how good Penn State is, and it's amazing. Everybody's talking about the schedule and how easy it is, but guys, they played a heck of a schedule last year to win the Big Ten, so there are no apologies here or anywhere, for what has been in front of them, with the exception maybe of the non-conference portion of the schedule. I think that needs to get a little bit tougher. But I'm looking at what Harry Cajones says over here in comments. Maybe we can call that one up, but it says still plenty of games left to be played. Control our own destiny. Harry, first of all, I might suggest Manscaped. 20 Go Blue at manscaped.com for Harry Cajones. And then let's defeat Sparty first. You know what? I was talking to somebody in the building today, and he said, hey, let's just bask in this one for now and where we are after 7 games. And he's absolutely right. This has been a fun season. Somebody actually posted on the message board before the Penn State game, why hasn't this been more fun? And I'm like, I think it's been fantastic, man. It's been what a fun year so far. And anytime you have an offensive line that paves the way for 418 yards rushing, that's unbelievable. And how fun is that? I don't need to see the ball going all over the place like Ohio State or anything like that. Show me some man ball where guys are absolutely beating people down, as Doug Skeen would say, and wishing that they had their chicken sandwiches at halftime, and I'm happy. So fantastic all the way around. Special teams have been great with the exception of kick returns. Another shout out to Jay Harbaugh there. Jake Moody, the big hit by him. Loved seeing that. So lots of fun.
Yeah, Penn State didn't even have their peanut butter and jelly sandwiches after the game because they threw them at Michigan in the tunnel in that halftime skirmish. So yeah.
Owen's right, man. They should have beat him by 40, at least 40. It could have been like a 55-3 win. Owen, you're absolutely right. But stuff happens, and the fact that they were able to bounce back after some bad luck plays just goes to show you the mental toughness of this team.
Brian Legier, I hope that's how you pronounce it, with a $2 donation. It says, this reminds me of Harbaugh's 49ers offense. Yeah, I think we've talked about this, and I talked with Ryan after the game on Saturday, and that, if you, namely on both sides of the ball, but really on offense, if you're able to control the line of scrimmage, you get to dictate the terms of what that football game is going to look like. It doesn't have to be basketball on grass. It doesn't have to be what Ohio State does well. Do what Michigan does well. It's always been a contrast in styles in that way. But yeah, I mean, this was, again, I'm starting 7 weeks into the year. I'm starting to get just a little bit tired of the schedule talk, only because this team has beaten the brakes off of everyone it's played. With the I mean, you can argue the Maryland game and parts of other games, but it's been dominant. It's been thorough. It's been decisive for the most part. And I don't think they've played their best football yet. And that's the scary thing. Bye week comes at the perfect time. Get these guys some rest. Maybe get some of the injured guys back, like a Nikai Hill-Green. Some of the other pieces that we've talked about before. Maybe Cade McNamara suits up. You're going to need your backup quarterback at some point in a game, you would think. Well, hopefully you don't need him, but you'd like to see him at some point in the game when you're in mop-up duty. But, yeah, I don't know what else there is to really say. I mean, this is one where and I was listening to Karsh and Jansen on that post-game podcast that they put out, where it's just like at a certain point when this game was I think it was 14-13 Penn State and then 17-16. They led twice. You kind of look at the box score and go, this doesn't match what the score says. And then over the course of the game, water found its level and it started to look like what the box score suggested it would look like. So, yeah, just another thorough and decisive victory for them on the biggest stage they've played yet. I mean, honestly, it's the biggest, if not for Tennessee, it would be the biggest win of the weekend, the biggest story of the weekend. But yeah, this is a team that it's set 4 goals coming to the year: beat Michigan State, beat Ohio State, win a Big Ten championship, win the national championship. After 7 weeks, all of that is still ahead of them. And there's a lot of room for improvement even, which is the scary part of it all. So let's start going to some questions here. This one's from Perry Stafford. In relation to Matthew Stafford, I wonder, will Michigan need to pass against Sparty, or will Harbaugh simply Penn State them despite Sparty's horrible secondary? I'll start with this one quick, and then you guys can elaborate. I do think that this is an offense that they've shown that they will take whatever a defense will give them. There were some people in the chat on Saturday mad that JJ McCarthy didn't have a bigger day, but when you're running the football like that, it's malpractice to not keep doing it that way, which Clayton also remind me, what was the stat where the big game blues, the blue pants, blue jerseys in terms of rush numbers?
Yeah. So at home since 2021, when Michigan's worn that combination, there's the rushing totals in those 3 games. I think it was 347 or something like that against Washington, 297 against Ohio State, and 418 against Penn State on Saturday, which is probably a coincidence, but you wore those because it was a big game. And then it's just more proof that Michigan is really, despite years of it being like, oh, it's a big game, Michigan's going to flop, it's kind of been the opposite over the last 2 years. It's obviously been the difference because those games have put you over the top. But most of all, it's just been kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, and Brian Lazier said, again, this is the offense he ran with Cap. You're absolutely right. And I didn't get a chance to comment on that, Brian. For your $2, you're going to get a little bit more play here because you're absolutely right. This is the offense he ran with Cap. And I like when Jim Harbaugh has his fingerprints on this offense. There's no question about it. And you know what? When he relinquished that to Josh Gaddis and they did their little speed and space thing that, had one segment of the fan base all excited. Oh my God, we're going to throw the ball over the field and everything else. I was like, that's not Jim Harbaugh. That's not his identity. And how is that going to work? And to me, that was when things really kind of started to fade a little bit. So now he's back. He's proven that he can beat Ohio State that way. I'd love to see him do it again in Columbus and show that it wasn't, it certainly wasn't a fluke because they absolutely dominated them. But no question that you're absolutely right. And I am Josh Flattis, terrible. But I think you're absolutely right. And I love seeing anytime an offensive line destroys people like they did up front, you're never going to hear a complaint from me. And I think that's what they need to keep doing.
Yeah, to tie that in with the 2 questions, the Kaepernick and the 49ers offense and what they will need to or want to do against Michigan State. I mean, Anthony, to your point, it does feel like this offense has kind of everything at its disposal. Jim Harbaugh said it last year when somebody asked about, well, did you think about passing more? I think it was after the Washington game. He said, well, we're not here. It's not our job to stop ourselves. So when something like that is working, they're going to hammer away at it. They came out throwing. They threw on the first play of the game in this game. They had a couple big throws. They picked up 3rd downs through the air. So, they're going to do that when they need to. But the thing that does remind me the most of that offense with not only Kaepernick, but Alex Smith too, is just the everything is at their disposal. They can change things at the line of scrimmage, and the play action game is getting more and more prevalent over the last couple of weeks. We're going to see that in the bigger games. Jim Harbaugh, he saves the crazy things like play action even for some of these bigger games. They had 9 play action throws in this last game, connected on all 9, I believe. So that is, they got things that they're doing off of other things, and you can tell that, the people that were saying, it's vanilla offense, it probably was to an extent, because they know in these bigger games they can pull out and go off tendency and things like that, and it worked on Saturday.
The one complaint I might have was the 3rd and 2 when he threw the pick that changed the complexion of the game. You're dominating on the ground.
Yeah.
You're moving these guys, continue to spread them out like you were, and, go shotgun. That play, I used to say, as I told Doug Skeen yesterday, I like to, why go shotgun when you only need a yard? But this team in short yardage and shotgun has been outstanding. These guys get such a great push, led by Oluwatimi in the middle. And you know what? You're in 4-down territory there. If you don't get it on 3rd and 2, you get it on 4th and 1, which we saw later in the game. So maybe that's my one complaint in that whole game, other than obviously the big run too by Sean Clifford there, what he got free. So, but overall, there's nothing to complain about in this game other than a couple of bad breaks, 1 or 2 plays. You move on here, complete emasculation, and now you got a bye week to heal up and get ready for Sparty.
Yeah, and for all the questions about unleashing J. McCarthy or taking whatever you want to call it, I feel like to a certain extent the box score doesn't reflect this, but in a way they did. He ran 7 times for 57 yards. I think unleashing him is kind of giving him free reign to make plays off script with his legs, and also get him more involved in the QB run game as well. So no issues with that. Again, it was another efficient game for him. 17 for 24, 145 yards. It's not gonna wow. It's not gonna jump off the page. But even the interception for him bounces off. It's a tipped pass, bounces off a guy's helmet directly into the arms of a linebacker. Remind me of, was it J.K. Dobbins in 2019 who fumbled and the ball bounced directly into his own hands?
He dribbled the ball.
Yeah, it was like dribbling a basketball. So,
yep.
Again, I'll give him Sean Clifford, the quarterback run. That wasn't a fluke play, just a bad defensive play. But other than that, that the pick was not a great decision. And God, that one play to Blake Coram where JJ just kind of closes his eyes and launches it over to the right sideline. Stupid, can't do that. But other than that, he is doing. The stats aren't sexy, especially with some of the passing games that he's had, but it's the plays with his legs. It's the things he can do when he rolls up, the things he can do off script that has kind of added a different dimension to this offense without, straight up going to throwing the ball 35 or 40 times a game. So,
and he still accounted for 200 plus yards despite in a game in which they ran for 418. So, you know what? It's like he said too, and I loved his attitude about it. He said, you know what? If I can stand back there and watch these guys and watch the holes and watch us run for 418 yards, I'm happy. He knows he's going to get to the NFL. He knows this offense is going to get him there. And you know what? He just wants to win. And I love that about him.
Absolutely. He is, I think he's proven to be everything they could have asked for out of him and more so far. So that's been a good development. Let's go to Josiah Wittenbach, who asks, is red zone offense the biggest issue to solve for this team down the stretch? We love Jake Moody. As you said before, I think he made arguably the play of the game on Saturday on that special teams tackle. Don't need to see 26-yard field goals, 27-yard field goals, 23-yard field goals. To me, that's by far the most frustrating aspect of that game on Saturday.
Yeah, they got to get better in that area. I do think, the run game's great down there. We saw it last year when they struggled a little bit more in the red zone where they would just kind of only want to run the ball as well. I think you can open it up a little bit more there. I guess that would be not a complaint, but just maybe a tweak that you can make. So, yeah, it's up there with one of the bigger issues. I think you got to, refine some of your calls down there, and you have 2 weeks to do it before Michigan State. So it's kind of a decent spot to be in, that you're moving the ball so well that you're in the red zone that many times too. That's something to note as well. Even I pointed that out even last year when they were having those issues kind of middle part of the season where they had more red zone attempts than just about everybody. So you're moving the ball well. You're going to get down there. Sometimes it's not going to go your way, but that was a thing too. It wasn't just the big plays from Penn State that kept them in the game. It was partly Michigan because they got field goals instead of touchdowns on some of those on the first 2 drives, especially. So something to clean up for sure.
Yeah, and let's give Penn State some credit. They came in as one of the top
Yeah.
defenses in the country in red zone defense. And I'll be honest, in watching the film, I thought it was more execution than play calling down there a couple times. Okay, there were 2 things. There was one play on which Donovan Edwards probably scores if he's patient and cuts left instead of right into a pile. That's a you know what? There was a huge hole there, and that's coming. We're starting to see it with him, kind of like we did with Blake Coram when he continued to improve under Mike Hart's tutelage last year, and now we're seeing him as an elite back, frankly, and his vision and everything else. Donovan Edwards is going to get there, and we saw it later in the game, right, when he was more patient and found the holes, and he ran for 178 yards or whatever it was. So, and then the other play, JJ McCarthy airmailed one to Donovan Edwards in the flat, where Edwards probably would have walked into the end zone. He had a couple 3 blockers in front of him, just a bad throw. Perry, thanks for the $2, and it just wasn't there. And then the last one, Giovanni El Hadi, the offensive line just didn't do its job when they were down there at the goal line. Somebody got tangled up, and a play that was, you can't lose 3 yards on 2nd and goal from the 2 guys. You can get stuffed or you can get a yard, but you can't go backwards 3 yards. And that was just an awful play. That's awful execution. In no way, shape, or form are they designing any plays here where, okay, we're going to lose 3 yards. There's no way that they were thinking, okay, we're going to lose 3 yards on this play. At the very worst, it's going to be, maybe a yard gain, and then we've got 2 shots to get into the end zone. So to me, it was execution. I think I'd still like to see some fades. I don't know who the receiver would be. Again, maybe Andrell Anthony or something like that, at times. And as our John Borton said, hey, maybe they should just score outside the 20 and instead of waiting to get in there. But to me, on Saturday, it was execution. I think it's a great call, a great question. But in my opinion, that's what we saw on Saturday.
Yep, I want to take a moment now while we are about 17 minutes into our show. I want to talk about our friends. We do have a lot of questions in the queue that we will get to here. You guys are coming hot and heavy with them on a Monday night, starting off the bye week. But I do want to talk about our friends over at the Rogue Shop. As you guys know, it's a husband and wife business led by Richard and Shar, who are craft cannabis farmers specializing in small batch sustainable plant medicine. Richard is a disabled combat veteran, and his wife is a certified CBD consultant and life coach. They operate out of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and they work to not only grow and manufacture, but also educate about THC-based medicine. So if you're someone that has chronic pain, insomnia, anxiety, anything that might diffuse some stress, they are willing to hop on a live chat, give you some detailed feedback, and find if there's something they might have for you. I mean, they have the lollipops, the hard candies, the tinctures, salves, lip balms, bath soaks, CBD flowers, hot cocoa, you name it, gummies, edibles, whatever you need, they have for you. So they grow their own stuff. They manufacture their own products with their own 2 hands, unlike their competitors who are replacing employees with machines. So each box comes with, and this is what we love the most about them, it's a handwritten letter sent with love from Mr. and Mrs. Rogue that adds that extra touch to their care packages. Guys, they've been very good to us so far. A couple care packages have come, I believe, to each of us at this point, and we are just big fans of their sponsorship, of their support of our show, and also, we stand by the people and the product as well.
Yeah, I've gotten 1 care package so far. Pain cream was in there. Highly recommend that. Any aches and pains, slap it on, and it does a great job. So the CBD gummies as well helps you relax, focus a little bit after, unwind after a long day.
Yeah, no question about it. And it's helped me sleep, guys. It's amazing when you write as much as we do. Everybody thinks, oh, you're going to be sleeping like crazy. You know what? That's just not the case. You're always wondering what you have to do next. These guys have helped out, and they're good people, man. Thanks for your service, Mr. Rogue. And just again, what, we don't support products, or we don't support people that we don't believe in. We certainly believe in these people.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's screen time this time of year. When Apple sends the analytics to my phone at the end of the week or my laptop, it's eye-opening. And when you look at a screen that much, get a little bit of a tangent here. When you're staring at screens that much each day, like Chris said, you go to bed at night and you're wired because there's not the the stimulation of having this bright screen in your face at all times. So long story short, we love Rogue Shop. You can use the promo code the Wolverine for 10% off. I forgot to squeeze that in there. So rogueshop.com, use promo code Wolverine for 10% off. We appreciate your support of our show. Let's go to another question now from Travis Foster, who says, did you all see the development and building of a monster up front over the past few years? Is it coaching? I didn't see it coming. I'll take this one quick and then, of course, be the point guard and pass it around. A couple of years ago, I mean, especially during that COVID season, which we put an asterisk next to for a lot of things, I was surprised. Like, that season was a step backward because, one, they weren't even practicing together, the starting offensive lines. They would meet in separate rooms so guys weren't getting COVID. Then they had a rash of injuries, and there was just never there was a disconnect there anyways towards the end of the Ed Warner era. So things are much better now. They've recruited the offensive line extremely well. Ben Herbert gets those guys ready to play too. And Sharon Moore, I mean, not that we ever doubted he'd be good there, but that transition from tight ends to offensive line has been seamless and also just kind of taking this thing to the next level.
Yeah, the 2020 was so weird. Jalen Mayfield showed up late. They didn't even have a camp, because remember, he had already declared for the NFL. Then he got hurt. Other guys got hurt. They were shuffling in. Zach Zinter was forced to play as a true freshman. Blessing in disguise, with getting him that experience. But the offensive line play was good 2018, good in 2019, but they've just taken that leap to elite. And I didn't doubt Sharon Moore, but I questioned whether or not he would be a really good offensive line coach because he hadn't done it before. Well, he has passed that test, and he is becoming one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. And you're right. I've thought about this over the last couple of days since the Penn State game, where it's like, it is amazing how, Harbaugh always likes to run the ball and be the more physical team. And, that was kind of his MO from the beginning all the way until now of his tenure. But the fact that it's turned out like this, where you're just bludgeoning opponents that are as good as Penn State, as good as Ohio State last year, other teams, it's really, really impressive. I didn't see this coming. I'm not surprised with some of the talent they brought in on the offensive line that it has, gotten better. And I'm not surprised that I think this offensive line is better than it was a year ago. But the fact that it's this elite is a little bit surprising, and it's been huge for this Michigan team because they've been able to lean on those guys in some of the bigger games. And speaking of those bigger games, they got beat up against Georgia last year, but not saying this offensive line would handle a defensive line like that, because nobody would, but I think they're better equipped against even some of those better teams as well, with Olu Oluwatimi at center, 3 guys that have improved that are returning starters, and then a couple guys in Carson Barnhart and Trente Jones who are playing high level football too and getting better. So it's been really nice.
I would argue that those previous lines underachieved. If you look at what John Runyon Jr. is doing in the pros, and Michael Nwenu and some of these guys, and where they were drafted, Mayfield, these guys, they should have been better than they were as the sum. They just weren't as good as they were the individual parts. And I think Ed Warner took a step in the right direction there, and Sharon Moore has really elevated that. Now, we're going to see it in next year or in the next couple of years how much of that was personnel too. Sometimes you get guys that work together and play so well together, and they just turn out to be great lines because they have great linemen who play well together. So, but Sharon Moore did play offensive line in college, so it's not like he came in here and they said, "Hey, you know what? You don't know what you're doing, but we're going to give you a shot anyway." He came in there and he had plenty of experience. And they love him. You can tell. And speaking to these players, when you got players who love their coach and really want him to succeed, then you're going to get the best out of them. There are different ways about it. Les Miles, those guys hated Les Miles when he was here because of the way he coached them, but he still got the best out of them. But Sharon Moore is the opposite of that, and you can tell. I was a little bit worried when he took on some of the offensive coordinator duties as well, if he was going to have enough time for these guys or if they were going to take a step back. But now that they're all healthy, and I consider them healthy even with Carson Barnhart in there because he's a starter just like Trente Jones is, we're starting to see what these guys can do. And when they take it seriously and when they're challenged, like Iowa challenged them and like Penn State challenged them, and they were still chirping in the tunnel, even though they're getting their ass kicked, you know what? It was fun to watch. So this line to me is one of the 3 best I've seen at Michigan in my however many years, watching this football team at this point. So let's see how they finish.
Yeah, some people think less is more. I think more is more. Sharon Moore has been more for this program.
Look at my man Jake Sherba.
How long were you workshopping that one, Clay?
Yeah.
I don't know, a couple seconds.
Jacob Sherba with the $10 super chat. Bye-week beer money. Hope you guys get to take a little bit of a breather. Pff, that's a good joke. Thank you, Jacob. But do you anticipate the physicality of the Illinois defensive line being a bigger challenge than Penn State's? That's not a question I thought we'd get to start the year. Chris, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Jake, we love you, man. The Jacob Sherba is a preferred customer on the fort, by the way. So he's got some information he passes on every now and then too. You're a great dude, man. So when you come to town, that $9.99 is going to be beer money spent on you. So, you know what? It's a great question. I've watched some Illinois football. I didn't think I was going to be watching a lot of it, and it looks like a Brett Bielema, Wisconsin team, fellas, and they are tough. They are physical, and they are not. I don't know the size of the guys up front. You know, I heard James Franklin lamenting the fact that his guys were undersized at certain positions. It's funny because he wasn't saying that before the game. You know, it's only after they got their butts kicked that he says, "Oh, we gotta pick it up and do in recruiting or whatever." But I think that will be a challenge. I think it will be more of a challenge. In other words, I don't think Michigan's going to be running for 418 yards on Illinois. And I think you're going to see a better approach. I didn't think Penn State's approach was very good defensively. Some of their schemes, you know what, they were just getting absolutely manhandled up front. Michigan didn't throw because they didn't have to throw, and I didn't think Penn State adjusted very well. I don't think you're going to see that with Bielema. So I do think that will be a bigger challenge, Jacob.
Yeah, Jacob Sherba, one of the top posters on the Fort, our premium message board. So appreciate the question. I agree. I mean, we have the benefit.
We lost your audio there, Clay.
Am I back?
You're back.
So I think it will be a bigger challenge with the benefit of hindsight there. You know, because we saw what Michigan did to Penn State. But yeah, you're right. That's going to be a physical game the week before Ohio State. And somebody was saying, oh, it's going to be a really good, kind of setup game for Ohio State. I kind of disagree in a way. It almost would remind me of one of those Indiana games in 2016 and 2018 where they were super physical. And then you go play Ohio State when maybe you're a little bit beat up. So hopefully they can get past that one without, having any bumps and bruises and things like that. But I thought Maryland last year going into that Ohio State game was the perfect, in terms of style, setup game for Ohio State. But yeah, it's going to be a big game. They're ranked, number 20 in the country, I believe it is. And Brett Bielema has that thing rolling. We'll probably be picking their games on our Thursday podcast every week just because they keep playing in such big ones and keep winning. So. And
potential that could be 2 weeks later. You're playing them again in the Big Ten championship game. What a weird,
crazy.
That's such a weird.
Somebody's got to win the West, right?
Yeah, right. Watch it. It'll still be Nebraska or something. Watch something stupid. Shane Johnson, another. We call them in the radio industry a P1 listener in that top tier with a $9.99 super chat. Maze Out was electric at the Big House. Being with my 7-year-old made it the best live sporting experience for me over the 97 Rose Bowl. Sent you 2 epic pics via Twitter, CB, of us in our first row end zone seats. Let's go. Yeah,
I commented on one of those actually, Shane, and it was great to see, man. I love it when people bring their kids to the Big House. It reminds me of when I went to my first game against Purdue in 1980 when I was a little kid. Mark Herman under center. This is way before your time, guys, but man, it brings tears to my eyes, man, because there's such bonding moments, these games, and we're seeing less and less of it. I think. You know what? It was great to see a full stadium, Shane. I'll say that because at times this year the students haven't gotten there or they leave at halftime. That place was rocking and you could hear it through the glass in the press box. I miss that. I miss sitting outside with my kids and my family at times, unless it's, weather like that Northwestern game that one year or the Purdue game where the rain was coming sideways and then it turned to snow and sleet. But overall, man, what an atmosphere. I compared it to Ohio State last year. I think was the best one I think I've ever been at, just because of what was at stake and everything else. But that was a great pick, Shane, and we appreciate you again, man. I hope you're making some good money there, giving us your $9.99 every week, brother.
That Ohio State game atmosphere last year was just its own beast. But yeah, you were already 40 years old in 1980, says Zion Schaub. So
we're gonna take $9.99 from you. Somebody figure out a way to get $9.99.
Can we charge him somehow? How do we do that?
Not that old, brother. I'm not that old.
Yeah.
So electric environment on Saturday, about as good as it could be for a noon game against a non Ohio State opponent, maybe a non-Michigan State opponent too, but that was right up there with some of the better ones. And I think we're going to see another one next Saturday night, October 29th at 7:30 against Michigan State. I think regardless of how good or bad Michigan State is, it's going to be a rocking big house again. And I'm excited already. I will enjoy the bye week, but I kind of wish we had that game this weekend.
All right, we're going to do a couple rapid fire ones here because the queue's starting to get backed up here. So we will start, since we've been talking offensive line, we'll start with C. Faustus says, do you think this O-line is better than last year's? Quick answer from me, yes, I think so.
I agree. Yeah.
I think they are very close, and I think they're going to be by the end of the year, and I think they are really getting there. I think Oluwatimi at center is really the best I've seen at moving people since probably John Vitale in 1988, 87, 88. Steve Everett was up there too, but man, that guy's a beast. All
right, we'll stick with the offensive line, but also shout out to Blake Coram as well. What's more likely, Blake Coram as a Heisman finalist or offensive line repeats at Joe Moore winners? This is from Zion Schaub.
Man, that is a great question. I would say Blake is a Heisman finalist, I guess, just because Joe Moore winner is tough. If you would have said Joe Moore Award finalist, I'd probably go with that. But I'd say Heisman finalist. And the stat basically that from Birchie, our friend over at 971 The Ticket, is through 7 games, Blake Coram, 901 rushing yards, 13 touchdowns. The last running back to win the Heisman, 2015, Derrick Henry for Alabama, through 7 games, 901 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns. So he is right on pace there. He did it in a huge game, which is going to help. He's got a couple more big games to do it in and have those moments, but all eyes will be on Columbus in that last Saturday of the regular season. And if he has a few moments in that one, I would not be surprised to see him in New York.
You know that Michigan State's going to stack the line too and try to slow him, so he's got to have a big game on national television on that Saturday night too. So yeah, and they don't like to give those awards back to back. You know what? They kind of like to spread them out. Even if they were to rush for 400 or 500 yards here in the next, you know what? Well, that means that not only is Blake Coram, upping his chances for the Heisman, but then you've got a chance maybe to be both.
Maybe both.
Who knows? But if that happens, then Shane, we're going to give you all your money back and then double it.
Yeah, I say
keep pledging our money out for everybody.
I'm sorry. I love these guys, man.
It's not coming out of your pocket. It'll come out of ours. We're lower on the totem pole.
That's exactly. Why do you think I did it?
Well, there it is. Shane Johnson, of course, with a quick $4.99 question here for us. And this is, I wish EJ was here tonight to answer this because he will go deeper into this. I'm sure if you're back for the Wednesday show. He says, since it's a bye week, fellas, let's go with the recruiting question. We have won 19 of the last 21 games, the last 2 seasons, and ranked in the top 5. Why is Michigan's recruiting class ranked 23rd? I think we've been pretty upfront about obviously a slower start this offseason with the Jim Harbaugh stuff, the uncertainty with the Vikings. NIL has been off to a bit of a rocky start, but slowly but surely kind of catching up behind the scenes. I mean, they just need to keep winning football games. They lost some of their own created momentum. Jim Harbaugh often talks about controlling the things that you can control. All they can control is the perception of what their program is, and they do that by winning football games. So I would still kind of expect them to close things out on a somewhat high note. I do think the ship has probably sailed on like a top 15 or top 10 class, but I think that they can add some guys here late. And again, without Shane, come back Wednesday. I mean, EJ could probably do a whole show on this if you guys asked about it, but that's kind of where I see it right now.
Yeah, I think go ahead. No.
I'll flat out say it. It's NIL. And in any other year, they would have been, okay, Jim Harbaugh would have made it clear that, he said, I'm not going anywhere again. I'm not saying he's frustrated. I'm not speaking for him, but I know for a fact that some of the coaches in that building are, because they were not prepared, the athletic department as a whole. And I understand that their hands are somewhat tied as to what they can do, but there is no reason that they should be this far behind. There was an independent study done from what we've heard, and Michigan is way down there. They've got a certain amount of time to fix it here. And there are guys that have to do it. If it weren't for Jared Wangler, guys like Jared Wangler and Jordan Acker, they would be so far behind. And a guy like on our message board, I'm not going to say his name, but who we know has been at the forefront of getting the initial team, these guys on the team, their money and their cars and stuff like that. for the NIL, it's not pay to play. It's legit opportunities. Then they would be so far behind that they might not even be 23. But that is exactly what it is, and it's really disappointing because there's no reason for it. Santa Ono, the president, has come in and made it very clear to people already that is going to change. So I think next year you're going to see Michigan get caught back up. It's not going to be flat out pay to play, but they are going to have some structure here where they are at least on somewhat of an even keel with some of these programs.
Yeah, it's always going to be hard to beat, the teams that are going to do the McDonald's bags and things like that.
Right.
But Michigan can compete at a higher level. And Chris, you said we, expect them to as things progress. Santa Ono took office on Friday. So, still early there. And I think we'll see some of those results. As far as over the last several weeks and, the winning and why your recruiting hasn't caught up, I would just say be a little bit more patient because they could get a couple guys here, maybe flip a kid from somewhere else, maybe a rival that isn't having a great season in Indiana or something like that. And, you could see a couple of those things late in the process. But at the same time, it's there was lost momentum early in the offseason. There's been PFP, pay for play, going on in Michigan's, lack of NIL success, and it's kind of all snowballed. Now you don't have a good class, and it's hard at times to convince a kid to join a not so good class. So that's an element too. But yeah, it's been disappointing.
Keep an eye on Notre Dame's class too, Anthony. That's a tire fire up there. Who'd want to go to that dumpster fire? And some of their guys are listening to Michigan's pitches now. So keep an eye on some of those 5-star kids.
Yeah, real quick, shout out to Zion Schaub, who's been sending questions and just sent in $10 for us. So I feel like we're in a nice little groove here. So you guys have a little bit more time to bump yourself up to the front of the line if you have a question you want to get in. Probably another 5 to 10 minutes we'll go here. Do have a couple questions still to get to. Just one last thing on the NIL. I think Michigan's, at least from the people we know, the people we've talked to, they want to make sure they get the guys on the team taken care of. And once you have that, then you have data points for guys to say, hey, you do this once you get on campus. This is what the opportunities that are available to you. So we still are early in it. I think at some point the PFP, as Clay put it, bubble is going to burst with the schools like Texas A&M and the McDonald. That's pay for play is going to have an adverse effect on those teams, I think. But we'll see. There's still a lot of work to do in that area. But
that's been going on for a long time too. So.
That's true. But they're numbers aren't public. Numbers are public now. They didn't used to be. I mean,
and let's be honest. There's no reason that Michigan State should be getting 4- and 5-star recruits or whatever at this point. Above Michigan, it's ridiculous. Let's come on. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, it's everyone's doing the quiet part out loud now.
Right.
So we'll see. There's still a lot of work to do there, but I do think at the end of the day, Michigan's slow burn approach is probably the better way to take it, though they should be much further along than they are. So couple more questions here. We're going to kind of rapid fire it. Quick one from Mike Smith, injury status updates. I know the ones of note are obviously Nikai Hill-Green, Eric All, Cade McNamara. So heading into the bye week, Chris, I mean, I guess what are you hearing on these guys?
I think Cade McNamara will be back for Michigan State, and all this talk about how he's going to shut it down and not be there for his teammates is a bunch of crap. So we do expect him back. In fact, he was close against Penn State. Clay was watching him throw on the sidelines, so we had him get the specs out. Got there early as he always does. Nikai Hill-Green, I think, is one of those nagging injuries that just keeps cropping up. You think you're close, and then you take a step backward. Eric All is going to be out for quite some time. So, and then Trante Jones, we'll see with those high ankle sprains. I think Carson Barnhart had the same injury. We've seen him come back from it. Either way, it'd be great to have him there as insurance, but Carson Barnhart's done a hell of a job too. So that's where things stand. And I think that's pretty much it. It was nice to see Jaden McBurrows, though, out there dressed and running around too. It means he's coming back as well.
Yeah. Cade was looking okay, throwing the ball around. He wasn't in cleats or anything in early warm-up. So, yeah, that was good to see. I think Nikai Hill-Green may be on the Drake Harris rehab plan. Which is unfortunate because that's a position of need right now. But yeah, and Jaden McBurrows was moving pretty well as well. And Jalen Perry is back as your backup corner. So they're getting a little healthier. And Trante Jones, probably a couple more weeks you would think with an ankle. So
it's Michigan State, man. He's going to want to be out there.
Yeah, I think if he can get out there, he'll want to. But then if not, I mean, you'll be fine with Carson Barnhart, and then you have Rutgers the week after and Nebraska the week. There's time for guys that truly need to get healthy to do so. But but boy, you'd love to have all hands on deck for Michigan State to do what you can, so to speak. $1.99 coming in from Richard. Also, Brooks, he says, love the line play. Who is your biggest fan? So Rich has been a longtime follower of mine, and actually in his Twitter bio says he's like the founding member of the Anthony Broome fan club. So I do have some groupies out there. There are some of them closer than others, but
big time.
It sounds like the sequel to Misery coming up. I am your number one fan. So Richard, you just outed yourself, so be careful now, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep an eye on him. No, Rich is a great dude. We actually met in Indy last year for the first time in the flesh. So
awesome.
It was fun for one of those. It's fun when you have those big events where people you can finally put a face to a name with the people that you've met online and things like that. So, Rich, love your support. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. We have time for a couple more here. Let's go to. There's a couple in here. This one's from Jesse, who asks, should we be worried that Michigan starts slow and don't pick it up until the second half?
I thought they started fast in most every game. I mean, they settled for field goals against Penn State, but they came out firing, moving the ball as well. They started well against Iowa. A lot of those scripted drives have been good. Defense has been on its heels a couple times early. Maryland, Indiana come to mind, but then they tighten up. Third quarter stat is great. They've only allowed 6 points in third quarters all season, so they're starting halves well. I don't think it's much of a concern. I think it's been pretty much even across the board, other than you've actually seen them get stronger as games go on, which I would prefer to see, other 100%. Than maybe a couple garbage time touchdowns late.
Agree. And your point about the halftime adjustments is fantastic. Reminds me of the Bo Schembechler teams. They come out, they own that the second half. And Penn State had a drive. They had the long pass there, but Michigan came out and did what they needed to do. So, but I agree with you. They've come out and dominated that first drive against Iowa. The offense moved right down the field. 5 plays? Blake Coram touchdown. So I'm good with it. I'm good where they are. I don't think they've come out sluggish at all. And I think you're going to see them come out pretty fired up a week from Saturday night.
Yeah, this last one's going to be a question for me because this is what I put on the thumbnail for the show. Mm-hmm. Just kidding. We have a $4.99 super chat from Michael Ivor, who says, if we throw down the field only when we need to, and I don't know, can you follow that up, Michael? I don't know if that's a statement or a question, but we do appreciate the $4.99.
I agree with him. I do agree with him there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's kind of like when they buzz in on Family Feud before knowing the question,
Yeah.
So, if they throw downfield only when they need to, I think what he's probably getting at is that going to prepare them maybe for some of the bigger games on the schedule, I guess. But to me, you know what? I think they're doing exactly what they should be doing, right? If you can run the ball and right down somebody's throat, then that's what you continue to do. I don't think there's any question that JJ McCarthy has shown that he's capable. And when they needed to, like they did against Indiana, they came right out and flat out put it in JJ McCarthy's hands. They showed a lot of trust in him, letting him throw from the end zone a couple times there too. So I'm not worried about that, other than the fact that he's got those couple plays every game where you're like, oh God, why did he throw that one? And he's lucked out. Didn't luck out on the one on Saturday, lucked out on the other one. But again, he's young and he's doing an unbelievable job. If that's the only criticism you have of this kid at this point, when he's completing 77% of his passes, then you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I'm going to complete the second half of Michael's question, seeing as my first half of it was cut off because of Michael's question.
Mm-hmm.
I put it on the thumbnail for this episode. Is Michigan a college football playoff team? When you look at the across the country right now, they're ranked 4th, but in the grand scheme of things, looking into your crystal ball, is this a team that is equipped to get back there? I think they are. I think they can do everything that's in front of them.
Yeah, Ken is different than Will, in my opinion. And not saying that you guys don't also agree with that, but I think they can be. I think right now you would put them in, but it's at the end of the season. We know what comes then. They have to go to Columbus. I still wouldn't pick them to win this game at that point. I think you can still get in if you lose that game and if you win the rest of them. But it comes down to what happens elsewhere around the country. It's not in your hands anymore, so it's hard to say. But I'll say, yes, it can be and, will be if they continue to play at the level that we saw on Saturday and the level that we know they can play, because they did it last year and they look like they're only building on that.
Here's the thing. This is the year that you wish that you had a 12-team playoff, right? Which is what it should be, because you're going to have a ton of teams there, in my opinion. This is going to be the year, finally. We say this every year, but that you're going to have a bunch of teams that deserve to be there, and it's not just the obvious four. And a lot of teams that can beat other teams, as we've seen. Look at Alabama. They could have lost at home to Texas A&M before they go to Tennessee. There are literally 10 teams that I could see, and I still think Georgia. There's a Georgia fan on there trolling us, but I would agree with him that Georgia's still, in my opinion, the best team in the country. So, but they aren't unbeatable. And in my opinion, this would be one of those years that, hey, you say you lose a tough one to Ohio State and you get left out of the playoff, then that one's really going to hurt. So, but they can go down to Columbus and win. I'm not going to pick them to do that just yet, but I think they certainly can.
Yeah, if you're telling me that the worst, I mean, it would be great to see them in the playoff. Got to win the games in front of you. I think there's a very, very good chance that they go into that Ohio State game with 11 wins already under their belt. And I guess if you're coming off of last year, and if you tell me that the worst case scenario is that you're going to lose, win 11 games and go to the Rose Bowl, I mean, God, there are worse ways to end a season. But man, this feels like, I'll stop short of saying it's if not now, when, but that opportunity is wide open this year. And I think that the way that this team handles its business, I'd love to see him get back there, because I don't think there's a dominant Georgia type of defensive line in this field, right? I don't think there's if you want to say maybe Ohio State's passing game, fine, but you're going to have a chance to prove that wrong before we even get there. So we'll see what happens. I think this is a good place for us to put a pin in it and get a head start on our bye week, fellas, although the work never stops here at the Wolverine. Chris Ballas, appreciate your time. Clayton Safey, as always, thank you for your time. Rogue Shop, thank you so much for your time. Drop a like on this video, get it to 500, subscribe to the channel below. You can get the replays of these shows in your podcast feed, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get that stuff at. That's going to close it out for us tonight. So thank you so much. We will be on a normal schedule this week with all of the live shows, and same deal next week. There won't be a game to talk about, but we'll still be here and back at the normal time next week, 6 o'clock on Monday. So moved it up a little bit this week, but yeah, thank you guys so much for your support, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.